Well, hello, Quest. It's good to be back with you again. This is the second full week of March. We're headed for Sunday the 14th, and so looking forward to it. But I want to bring you up to date on some things, some that we've already said, and it'll be a little bit repetitive, maybe some other new thoughts. So, several different sections of what I'd like to say today. The first one is this: we don't probably say it enough, but this year at Quest, we thought our focus needed to be very similar to many years, but just in our thinking, our focus would be threefold. The first focus of Quest this year would be about connection. We really want people to be connected. Now, this past year, especially with the pandemic, but really some of the other issues that we were dealing with in our culture, seem to tear people apart, to have less connection, more conflict, more isolation, all that sort of thing. So we really want to work at connection. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if it's all that easy for us to do it corporately or to be the only way to connect people is corporately. I really want to encourage you to take the responsibility and take the initiative to be connected to other people at Quest. Obviously, you need to be connected in other places, at work and in your neighborhood, but it's really important for the body of Christ to be connected to one another. And so I want to encourage you to do that. We will also be trying to help establish connections by some of the things we're going to offer and initiate. But I want to encourage you to think about, how do I connect? And just so you know, the people you're going to connect with are not perfect people. There's going to be some challenges in the midst of all of that. None of us are perfect. So just encourage us, though, to be connected, to be in relationship, to be, probably the popular word in recent years is to be in community. And it's really a great word because community describes being integrated with one another to make life work, right? So the second emphasis that we wanted to have or focus this year was to do with evangelism, reaching out to people with a message of hope, a relationship of hope, right? And so we want to be connected to people doing that also, being able to share the hope that you have inside of you, and to be able to share what's going on. It's just a really important piece of telling people as they question life. And for me, that is one of probably the things that maybe affected me the most growing up. And I've told you before, but maybe for those who haven't heard it, for me, when I was in 7th grade, I had a really good friend who was in 8th grade, and he was a great wrestler. But like all wrestlers, they're always staying in shape, doing something. So we were on the track team in the spring of that year, and there was a commotion at the far end of the track. And as it all unfolded, my friend had passed away of a heart attack. It was the most shocking thing. How can an 8th grader have a heart attack? And he had a heart issue that nobody knew about. And as a result of the running, he passed away. And for a 7th grader, I began to really wrestle with what this was all about. What is this thing called life and death all about? And if he could pass, well, then I could too. And I began as an 8th grader, or 7th grader then, to wrestle with this whole thing called life and death. In 9th grade, I had an even closer friend, and a bunch of my friends were getting involved in something. They kept inviting me to be a part of it, and they would go down on weekend nights to the local golf course, and they were hanging out in the sand traps. A little crazy, right? But it's what middle schoolers do. And they were hanging out in the sand traps, and they were doing things, and they said they were having fun doing something. And they were using a spray cough medicine to get high. And I didn't realize it, but it was really the early form of the drug culture. And one of my friends, named Dave, particularly got deeply involved and eventually developed a drug habit that led him to one evening or one night break into a local store to rob it. And when he came out, he pointed at the policeman who was there, and as a result, the policeman in self-defense shot him and killed him. And I began to really wonder then about life and death. And if Dave could pass away, getting involved in something I was like tempted to get involved with, then what is this thing called about me? Maybe I could really head down the wrong road. I began to really struggle with where I was going. And that's when I began to hear the next year when I went to high school and got involved with a ministry called Young Life, who were sharing the truth of Christ with high school kids. And they're really good at it. And as a result, during that year, I began to hear how Jesus related to life and to death. And I began to answer some pretty critical questions at an age when you're beginning to think things through pretty deeply, and you're capable of doing that. And I just wonder if, even in today's day and age, especially after all the things that have gone on this past year, that we're not ready to maybe share the hope that we have in Christ with people who are looking for answers to life. And so I just want to encourage us all to be ready to share our own stories, to share how Christ has made a difference in you. It probably hasn't made you perfect, right? Of course, all of us fall short of that. But I want to encourage you to be ready to share your story, to care for those who are around you, or probably asking questions that you may not know about, and to be able to engage and be of a help to people and concern for them. So we're focusing in on connection, we're focusing on evangelism, but we're also focusing on ownership, leadership. And we, just before the pandemic started, we had kind of made an effort to get involved in a thing we called Walking the Walls, which utilized the book of Nehemiah about how they were going to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem after being exiled in Babylon. And they came back and the city was in ruins, and they were trying to rebuild the walls, and they needed everyone to get involved. Everyone to have ownership of the project as a whole and ownership of their piece of the wall. And they organized in order to do that. And they had to raise up leaders to help. The leaders are not to be the ones served. Leaders are people who serve other people. Right? They're the ones who are, that servanthood leadership is what it's all about. And we feel like we need that really badly at Quest. And we want to be raising up people to own and lead and be involved, and we need everybody. So I want you to think about what part of the wall is your part of the wall, and how do you connect yourself with other people to build that part of the wall, and how do we raise up leadership to help those people who are going to build that part of the wall together. How could you be a part of that? Because I think God just might want to use Quest to make a difference in this community, and really, frankly, around the world. He wants to use Quest rather than have it just shrink and kind of get muffled and shuffled off and not exist anymore. I think he'd like to use us. So I just want to encourage us to be all about connections, all about evangelism, and all about ownership and leadership. So please initiate, come and talk. Let's wrestle. Let's find a place for you. Okay? Second, I just want to remind us of the protocols that we've started. We've come back to one service, which means there's more people in the room. There were more people this past week than we expected. And so we've added more seats, but kept the distancing. And we've kept the pods, if you will. So I want to encourage you, as you come on Sunday morning, please register, but wear your mask, and then keep the distancing, but move as far into the auditorium as you can, and fill up those seats that are in the kind of the back, or at least in the end, if you will. Fill those up, and find a pod that's the right size for your group. So if you're a 2, grab one of a 2. If you're a 3, grab a 3, okay, or 4 or 5, whatever it might be, so that we can utilize our seating the best. We've added a little bit more, but kept the distancing. We've taken some of the things out of the auditorium that were in there so that we could have more room and make it better for everybody, okay? And then I would encourage you too. I think one of the things that brought back a lot of people was we're starting to get vaccinated. And these vaccines are really helpful. They're not perfect, but they're really, really helpful. Uh, but I want to just say, like some of the people in our community have been talking about, especially the Catholic Church, has always done a very consistent and faithful job to speak out against abortion. And one of the things they have brought to the table, and others, not just Catholics, but the Catholics have too, is the concern they have about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, I don't think we need to be crazy about this, but to understand that in that vaccine, there was abortive material used not just in the testing, which happened with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, but also in the production of the Johnson & Johnson as well as the AstraZeneca vaccines, that there was materials used in the production of that vaccine. And because of our commitment to the sanctity of life, I would encourage you, if there's any way that you could get the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccines, that I would encourage you to go in that direction. We want to stand for the sanctity of life all the way from conception to death and everything in between. That's important, I think, to the heart of God. And so I would encourage you to consider deeply that issue. It's your responsibility to make a decision. I can't make that for you. But I would encourage you to think that through. If there's no other vaccine available and you need it, I understand that, right? We understand. That's a choice you have to make. But for now, the Pfizer and the Moderna did not use any abortive materials in the production of their vaccines. All right, well, there's a few thoughts. As we navigate all the things that are going on in our world, may I just say there's a lot of things going on. The pandemic, among all sorts of other things, that we need to stay engaged and not get muffled by this, but to kind of make sure that we're stepping out, trusting God, because He's still about His work, He's still got a plan, and He is still exercising His sovereignty and His providence in the world today. And He wants us to be tools that He will use in the process. So, be wise, be careful, be bold, and be on target. Walk with the Lord and let Him use you as He decides, as He wishes, okay? All right. Love you guys. We will see you soon.